if we were to place the team today, do you think that you would make it, that you would not make it, or that you would be an alternate on the team? Communicate those standards early, and often. Make sure people know what it takes to make a particular team. The people who are going to message you are the people who are unhappy. We oftentimes don't message people and tell people when we are the happiest with them. We tend to tell them when we are at our negatives. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Cheer Biz podcast. I'm your host, Dan Cotton, and today we are talking about team placements and the stress after team placements and really how that impacts so many of us as coaches and owners, and just how it feels to be in this time of year where we've just placed our teams and we should be feeling amazing. We should be feeling optimistic. And sometimes that is our case, but oftentimes we can find things overtaken by negativity. Now, for those of you that are just starting to listen to the podcast or don't know me, my name's Dan Cotton. I'm the owner of Oregon Dream Teams. I've been coaching competitive cheerleading for the last 20 plus years. I've owned my own gym for going on 15 years now, and I have seen and done many, many things. I've made all the mistakes. I've had a few little successes, and I'm here to give you my advice from my experiences. Before we get into the episode, make sure you've followed all of our groups on Facebook. That is Cheer Gym Owners on Facebook and All-Star Cheer Coaches and Owners, as well as checked out nextgenowners.com. All right, getting into where this all comes from. So my day after team placements used to be full of angry emails. Like, it used to be full of phone calls and emails and Facebook posts and all sorts of just negativity around where athletes placed. And the reality is that this was maybe 5 to 10 people, but it sure felt like everyone under the sun, which is often what happens when we start getting bombarded with negativity. Is we can immediately jump to, this is how everyone feels. And in fact, oftentimes you will find that people who are dissatisfied will say things like, well, everyone else feels this way, and everyone else is talking about this, and everyone says this thing. And in reality, oftentimes that is really not the truth, but they are trying to convince you of that because it makes it sound like their position is stronger than it actually is. So over the years, though, I have learned some techniques where now my life post-team placements is maybe a couple questions, maybe a couple clarifications, but overall is not remotely as stressful as it ever used to be. This last year, we did team placements. I was not getting emails in the evening wondering when we were going to come out with the teams. People knew exactly when we were going to release the teams, and they weren't waiting by their computers stressed out. I was able to leave town. I actually left town to go run my camp in Missouri. I left. We sent out the emails. I answered a couple quick clarifications of like what times practices were after I landed in Missouri. And that was about it. It was pretty simple. I want to give you my tips and tricks for how I've found is the best possible way to have a relatively stress-free post tryouts, post team placements period of time. Now, is this going to be absolutely perfect? No, because there's always an X factor. And that X factor is human beings and their willingness to learn and realize the information that you're putting out directly actually applies to them. That's always the challenge, where you will have parents who say, well, yes, I heard you say X, Y, and Z, but I thought. And then they have their caveat for why they didn't think that that particular piece of information pertained to them or pertained to their athlete. So I've heard it all. So that's always the X factor when you're doing the steps that I'm going to talk about. Number one, and the most important one to help reduce this, is to communicate your standards prior to team placements. I find that even beyond communicating standards, communicating my thought process, communicating things that people should expect going into team placements, so they're not operating from a perspective of them filling in the blanks. I've filled in all the blanks. I'm not leaving anything up for debate. Are we doing crossovers this year? Yes or no? Are we going to be placing teams on certain levels or athletes on certain levels where they may not have the tumbling? Yes or no? Are we going to be hosting youth level 1 versus a junior level 1? Yes, no, maybe, right? I want to communicate all of those things really, really clearly as much as I can. Now, does that mean that I know every single thing before we head into our team placement discussions? No, I don't. Even this year, we went into team placements. I had kind of a thought and a plan. And then one of our coaches asked a really poignant question about crossovers and what should we do? And should we even field a particular team? And it spawned a really interesting discussion. And although we didn't end up cutting one of the teams, it was on the table for a minute and something we seriously considered, which would have been a significant surprise for people and was not something I had communicated ahead of time because we hadn't had the discussion. We hadn't had the thought. So the key is to communicate as much information as possible to include what your standards are for making a particular team. Now, this is going to happen not only in communicating with parents, but also in communicating with the athletes. So they also know what is going on. They know what you're thinking and they know what they can expect. Now, we are a program that does not do team placements in an environment where we do like a team reveal. I know some people do team reveals and have great success with them where athletes come in and they open a bag or they open a box and there's balloons and it's kind of like a gender reveal, but for their team, and it's really exciting. We have chosen not to do that historically because we want athletes to be able to process the information in a space that they feel they are comfortable in, because we know that sometimes athletes, even as prepared as we try to make them, are getting news that they don't want to hear. And so we want them to be able to have the reaction that they're going to have. Now, the flip side that I've had with this is, man, it would be really great to get everyone there, because sometimes when kids are not excited about a placement that they got, if they were to look around the room and they were to see the talent of the team that we've placed them on and they were to see what we're able to see, they would be more excited. They would be like, okay, great. This is actually going to be a good team. But then I can argue that the other way, where when we have those years where it's like, okay, we're going to have to find a couple bodies. Like, this team is not done yet. We're going to have to look at our class program. We're going to have to contact those couple kids that were on the fence about coming back this season. And we're going to have to try and field this team correctly. On the flip side, it's really, really nice to not have that situation where they look around the room and they're like, man, there's no one on the team. Or let's say you have 5 kids that don't make it to the team reveal and it's all your back spots. So they're looking around the room and parents are looking around the room and they're like, whoa, there's all flyers. There's no back spots on this team. And it eliminates some of those challenges. So that's the way that we've done it in the past. It allows people to process things in their own way. Now, that still goes back to communicating our standards prior to the event, so people know exactly how team placements are going to go out. I let all my parents know, do not wait by your computer. We are not sending them out be earlier than 8 a.m. on Saturday, and we are just going to schedule the email. So we had the decision done on Friday, and we just scheduled the emails to go out. So they went out at that time, and we didn't have to stress about it. I did it for many years where it was like, as soon as we were done, we were trying to get it out. And so parents would be waiting by their computer for us to put out the information. And it caused undue stress on them, undue stress on us trying to get it right. We always rushed and ended up occasionally making errors, forgetting to include an athlete on an email, whatever. We made different errors because we were going too fast. So making sure that we set that standard early allowed us to communicate at the time that we wanted and that fit best. So I highly recommend communicate those standards early, and often. Make sure people know what it takes to make a particular team, what it takes to make a particular level, as well as things like age. This has been one of the biggest complaints I've heard from clients this year is parents who are frustrated or unhappy because, yes, their athlete made this level, but what they really want is for them to not be on a junior team, but be on a senior team. And for all of my parents that are listening, this is like a pet peeve of mine. It's just as bad, if not worse, than people who want their athlete to be on a higher level. When parents are like, oh, well, my athlete she does better when she's around the older girls. So even though she's 10, I don't want her on a team with those young kids who are 8. I want her on a team where she's around older kids because that's where she does better. And here's the thing. The argument is always nonsense because inevitably in cheer, they're going to be on one end of that teeter-totter of age at some point in their career. So to say, well, they don't want to be the old girl on the team, that's not fun. They're the oldest on the team and everyone else is so much younger than them. Well, let's say they're the oldest on the team and it is a youth team. So your athlete is 10 and then the youngest is 6. Now, is that a big age discrepancy? You could argue that it is. It's 4 years. But if your argument is then, well, they're 10 turning 11, put them on a senior team. Well, that means that they're 10 turning 11 and oldest kid on their team might be a freshman in college, a super senior who's 18 and will turn 19 that season. Where's the bigger age gap, right? It's on that end. So just like you may not want your athlete to be on the younger team because they get along better with the older kids, like it's one of those things where eventually that's not going to happen. So we try to put athletes on the correct team placement for them. And oftentimes we look at age first. What is their age of eligibility, as well as what teams are we hosting? Sometimes it's just not possible to put athletes on that team due to numbers, due to other restrictions. So to say, oh, I want my athlete on an older team because they don't want to be around the younger girls is one of the more frustrating things for a coach and owner to hear. So communicating what you think you're going to have so people can be prepared. Number 2 is eliminate negative surprises. And what I mean by this is I want, when I send out my emails of team placements, for the only surprises for athletes and parents to get is to be positive ones, where they made a level that they weren't necessarily sure they were going to make. They made that team. I never want an athlete to go in and get the email and go, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. I didn't make it. Now, how do I do this? So I will tell you, part of it is the way that we structure our tryout process. So we've always done level groups and then some level practices. In the past, we've done 4 weeks. This year, we did 2 weeks. I liked 2 weeks better because it wasn't quite so laborious and the kids were not as stressed out for as long. So it was really 4 practices to kind of determine what our team dynamics were. And so far, it's worked pretty well. In those practices, basically those last couple practices, I try to have our coaches, and I make sure I do this, where I meet with all of the kids that were not on the team prior and or are potentially on a chopping block for a level that they want to be on. And I will sit down and I always start with the same question. If we were to place the team today, do you think that you would make it, that you would not make it, or that you would be an alternate on the team? And then they give me their assessment and I go, yes, I agree. No, I don't agree. I agree and don't agree. It kind of depends on what the athlete says. Surprisingly, oftentimes the kids that are the least close to making it outright are the kids who are like, oh, I'd 100% make it. And I'm like, you definitely would not make it if we place the team. And then I tell them why. I do that for a number of reasons. One, it tells them what they can work on. 2, it makes it so they're less likely to be surprised when we put out the emails. Now, you may be saying, well, then, Dan, why don't you just tell them whether or not they made the team? Because I change my mind sometimes. So I always err on the side of breaking their heart during that conversation versus breaking their heart in the email alone. So if a kid is on the fence, I will be very direct and say, at this point, I'm not sure you would make it. It's pretty unlikely. There's a possibility depending on the dynamic, but it's a low possibility. So I want you to mentally prepare to make X level or X team, or your best case scenario is as an alternate, and that's your absolute best case scenario. So I would just mentally prepare that is the absolute best case scenario. And the most likely scenario is that you're not going to make it. I tell them that information. I allow them to process it. I allow them to ask questions. That's the time where I say, and this is why your tumbling is not consistent enough, or your tumbling isn't super consistent and you're not contributing as a stunting position, insert stunting position here, base, flyer, back spot. And I explain all that to them and I ask them if they have questions. Does it work perfectly? No. But I can tell you that for the most part, the amount of negative surprises that have come out post team announcements is very, very, very low in our gym. And most of the time that they're having those negative surprises, it's either because they didn't come to the level practices, and so I never got to speak to them, or they're just simply delusional and they did not listen to the conversation that we had. But that happens pretty rarely. Occasionally, there's a little misunderstanding that may need some clarification. But for the most part, they know what to expect when those team placement emails come out. Do I definitely tell kids that I am pretty much going to take, but I'm not 100% sure on, or I just need to keep pushing hard? I'm not sure. You might be an alternate. There's a possibility you could make it, but I haven't made any final decisions. So you're definitely an on the fence person. Have I done that? Yes, I have. Because I actually do like them to have that moment of excitement of feeling they achieved something and not robbing them of the experience of knowing they made the team that they've been dreaming of making. On the flip side, I've absolutely walked up to kids in the middle of level group practices who have seemed crazy stressed out and nervous and struggling, who are totally good enough and totally on the you're going to make it, but you just need to chill, and gone, hey, I need you to relax. You're in a really good spot. So just do exactly what you've been doing for the past 3 months in the gym, what you did at your tryout. Just do that and you'll be fine. So stop stressing out. But again, I default to, I can reduce my stress post tryout by eliminating negative surprises. Limiting and eliminating. Sorry about that. That was horrible. And the last one is, I always strive in our gym. We always strive to make all our teams great and exciting to be on. What I want is for athletes who are on our prep program to dream of being in our level 1 elite program, and our level 1 elite kids to dream of being on our level 2 program, and our level 2 program kids to dream of being on our level 3. I want each level to be exciting and to be great. And so to do that, I have to build all of those teams really effectively. And we have to be really diligent about what we do for those teams and make them all exciting, make them all valuable. Because the worst thing you can do is make certain teams seem more special than others. Now, will it eventually happen? Yes. I've talked about them a million times. My level 4 team is one of my flagship teams in my gym. It's the team that people come to our gym to be on a lot of times, even if they're coming a few years early. Hey, I want to be on that team. I know I should go train there. It is the most sought after team in the gym, and it is one of the hardest to make. Also because it's a high level, but actually it is more sought after than my Worlds team, historically speaking. Not always, but just historically speaking. We want to make sure that all teams are exciting, all teams are great, all teams are successful. So athletes are pumped about making those teams, and they're less likely to be disappointed because they know that the team that they're going to be on is going to be fantastic. Ultimately, in this approach, my end result is I want the day after team placements to come out to be relaxed, to be chill, for everyone to be happy, for people to be posting excited posts on Facebook, for my phone to not ring beyond getting a text message that is, Sarah is so excited to be on this team. Susie is so thankful for everything at the gym. She can't wait to start practices. Those are the text messages I want to get. Now, remember people though, the people who are going to message you are the people who are unhappy. We oftentimes don't message people and tell people when we are the happiest with them. We tend to tell them when we are at our negatives. We as humans have a propensity to communicate dissatisfaction and negativity much more often than we are likely to tell people how much we appreciate them, how much we appreciate what they're doing. So just remember that when you're getting bombarded with some negativity, that it's still oftentimes a vocal minority, and it is not everyone in your gym. It's just important to remember, even though it may feel like that. And trust me, I've been there where it feels like everyone in the world hates you, or everyone is mad at you, or you just totally messed up. And there may be an error that you made, but oftentimes there are still many people who do support you and love you and want nothing but the best for the program and for you and for the athletes in the program. So as we leave this episode, most of you are through team placements. In fact, I would bet all of you, by the time you're listening to this, have already placed your teams. So where do you go from here? What I want you to do is I would love to see you assess your process and say, hey, was it painful this year? Was it painful last year? And if so, what are some things that we can do from this episode or other things that we've heard that can make the process less painful for us in the future? Let's not be masochistic about the way we approach running our all-star programs. Let's be proactive. Let's find solutions that are going to reduce stress and anxiety and struggle for us. Because ultimately, when you're answering those phone calls and you're worried about those people who are angry about the placement that they made, and you're spending all of your time and energy on that, you're not spending your time and energy working on the things that are driving your business forward, that are helping your business grow and setting you up for success in the future. All right, everyone, I hope you enjoyed the episode. Hopefully, if this is coming out before Dallas conference, I will see you in Dallas at our conference. If it's after, I hope you said hi. Please say hi to me. I promise I would love to meet you. It means more than you know when people come up and tell me that they've listened to the podcast and tell me that it has positively impacted their lives. So please come and talk to me. I promise. I know I'm bald and I know I have a serious face, but I'm not that scary. I'm happy to talk to you. And with that, we'll catch you on the next episode.